I never imagined that a marriage could dissolve in silence. In movies or novels, breakups are loud, messy affairs. Doors slam, voices crack with anger. People storm out clutching car keys as if possession itself could mark the end. But what happened to me was far more subtle. My marriage didn't implode. It eroded almost imperceptibly, like a river gradually carving a canyon through rock. Day by day, small shifts accumulated, until one morning I woke up and realized there was nothing left between us. No warmth, no connection, no sense that we were even on the same plane. My name is Ethan. I'm 37. And until recently, I told myself that Lauren, my wife, still loved me as she once had. Softly, gently, in ways that didn't require explanation. But love can decay when conversation becomes a negotiation, when truth becomes optional, and when simple questions turn into arguments. It began subtly. I'd ask her where she was going after work, and she would offer vague replies. Just with friends. Nothing important. First I excused it. Everyone deserves space, I told myself. I didn't want to become the husband who questions every movement, the man who scrutinizes each moment of freedom. But this was not space, it was distance. Carefully curated, deliberately maintained distance. And she guarded it as if it were a treasure. 3 nights before the moment that changed everything, she came home past midnight without a single call or message. She smelled of a citrus perfume unfamiliar to me. When I asked if everything was all right, she rolled her eyes and said, "Ethan, I'm not doing this. You don't need to know where I am every second. I'm an adult." That was the first time she spoke to me like a stranger. Distant, indifferent, unaccountable. And perhaps what stung most was not the lack of explanation, but the absence of honesty, the disappearance of the small truths we had once shared without thought. The turning point arrived on an ordinary Thursday evening. I had finished work early and decided to revisit a small downtown restaurant, Willow Grove Bistro, a place Lauren and I once loved before life grew complicated. She had told me that morning she was meeting a friend for dinner, a coworker named Cameron. I didn't question it. I simply wished her a good evening. But stepping into the restaurant, the soft murmur of conversation wrapped around me. Candles flickered on the wooden tables, and for a fleeting second, I felt as though I had stepped into a memory instead of a restaurant. Then I froze. Near the back window Lauren sat, not with Cameron, not with any colleague, but with a man I did not know. Her posture leaned toward him, her laughter easy, bright, unrestricted. Her hand rested casually near his on the table, the kind of closeness that isn't accidental. Numbness hit me first, a hollow, cold sensation, as if all the air had been quietly drawn from the room. Anger didn't come immediately. I didn't storm forward. I didn't demand answers. Instead, I slid into a seat directly behind them, close enough to hear her laugh, far enough to remain unnoticed. Part of me didn't understand why I was staying there. I suppose I wanted the truth in its rawest form, stripped of rehearsed excuses. Minutes later, she picked up her phone. Her shoulders rose as she typed quickly, with irritation and disregard. My phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. "I don't have to tell you where I am." She had no idea I was sitting right there, witnessing the lie unfold. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then lifted my gaze to the back of her head. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, casual yet deliberate. She seemed unburdened, untethered. The weight she had once deposited onto me, piece by piece, now simply existed elsewhere. I touched my phone, paused, and then typed one line, "Lauren, turn around." Instantly, her body stiffened. Shoulders pulled back, spine straightened, and then cautiously, as if stepping on fragile ice, she turned. In that instant, I didn't know what would break first. Her lie, our marriage, or the version of myself I had been bending into for her over the years. Our eyes met, and for the first time in months, I saw the flicker of recognition and another emotion I couldn't immediately name. Guilt, perhaps, or the sudden shock of being confronted. I remained silent. Any word could shatter what little remained. So I let the quiet speak. Around us, the restaurant continued. People chatting, silverware clinking. But in that moment, the world narrowed to just her and me back to back, connected by a fragile, invisible thread. Her voice came first, low and careful. "Careful, Ethan." I shook my head subtly. No words were necessary. My calm presence spoke volumes, a contrast to the anxiety I had carried for months over her silences, her moods, her sudden absences. I had learned that when love quietly erodes, confrontation doesn't repair it. Clarity does. I rose slowly, walking around the table. She flinched, gripping the edge, and the man across from her looked up, startled, uncertain. I said nothing. Not a question, not an accusation, not a glance at him. Only her. In that gaze, I laid bare everything without a single word. She tried to form sentences, but the words dissolved before leaving her lips. She understood. The control she thought she had was gone. Not over me, not over my calm, my clarity. I stepped past her and toward the exit. Outside, the night air was crisp, sharp, alive. City lights blurred, reflecting a mix of adrenaline and liberation. I didn't run. I didn't slam a door. I walked steady, heart steady. For the first time in months, I wasn't burdened by her absence like a stone in my chest. I was empty, yes, but in a freeing, cleansing way. Later she sent texts, short, pleading, defensive. She tried to explain, to justify, to reclaim control. But the truth had already been revealed, and I had already claimed my peace. I didn't respond immediately. Not in anger, but because I finally understood a truth I had resisted for too long. You cannot demand honesty, affection, or respect from someone who has chosen to withhold it. In the following days I unraveled the pattern of her quiet drift. Late dinners, unexplained absences, whispered calls, sudden commitments that never included me. There was no cinematic betrayal, no public humiliation, only a slow, nearly imperceptible drift that had taken years. I called Harper, my closest friend, who had been with me since our early wedding days. She listened silently. When I finished, she said softly, "Ethan, you're free now. You just didn't know it." And she was right. Freedom rarely shouts. Sometimes it whispers, emerging as a truth too glaring to ignore. That night, alone in my apartment, the silence was clean, uncluttered. It wasn't heavy or suffocating. It was full of possibility. I allowed myself to imagine a different life. Quiet mornings on the balcony with coffee, laughter-filled evenings with friends, spontaneous trips, and above all, the right to feel truly seen and valued. Weeks passed. I resisted the urge to check on her, to gauge her reaction. She didn't notice, or perhaps she didn't care. Our story had ended quietly, politely. When she eventually texted, "We need to talk," I replied calmly. 3 words loaded with years of clarity and resolution. I already have. In that moment, I realized leaving is not always about anger or revenge or dramatic confrontation. It's about reclaiming the self you've slowly surrendered. Walking into the night with steady steps. Knowing you are finally whole, unseen, unshakable, alive. The city hummed around me, and for the first time, I felt the strange, weightless clarity that comes after closure. A closure that demands nothing from the world, no fireworks, no spectacle, just the quiet certainty that I had found myself again.